Welcome to Women on Wednesdays on Web. Women on Wednesdays started last year. It's an advocacy series organized by Lift Louisiana. The purpose is to educate the public about issues that matter to women and families in our state and to mobilize them to engage their lawmakers in an effort to prioritize the policies that will improve the lives and the health and the well-being of women and children and families. We've been focusing a lot on economic security, particularly for families during this crisis, but also beyond this crisis. And we're really excited to have as our partners for today's Women on Wednesdays, the American Association of University Women, who have really been leading on a lot of the issues that impact the economic security of women and families in Louisiana, including equal pay and paid family leave. So that's going to be the focus of our presentations today. Just to give you guys some background, if you don't know, Lift Louisiana is a reproductive rights organization. We educate, advocate, and litigate for policies that will impact the health and the well-being of Louisiana's women, their families, and their communities. We have only hosted one of these Women on Wednesdays on the internet so far. So we're hoping that this one goes as smoothly as that one did. And we are recording this, and we will send a link to the recording out to the folks that have registered. If you didn't pre-register, but you'd like to receive the link, you can type your email into the chat box, and we'll make sure that we get the recording link out to you and any other resources that we can provide on today's topics. Just a little housekeeping. If you do have a question, you can unmute yourself by clicking on the phone icon that's on your computer, pressing *6 if you're on the phone, or you can type your question into the chat box. And if we don't have any other questions, then we will go ahead and get started with the presentation. So the first thing for the agenda today is that we're going to hear from Rhonda Kim Gleason, who's going to talk about paid medical and family leave. And then we'll hear from Vivian Guillory, who's going to provide us with a presentation about pay equity and pay transparency. We'll have time at the end for questions, but if you have them, again, you can type them into the chat box, and we'll get those answered by our presenters today. So again, thank you so much for joining, and I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda.
Hey, oh, how's everybody doing? Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Vivian, I'm not sure. I thought Vivian was going to go first with her presentation or her part of this. Or did you want, or are we just doing introductions, Michelle?
So I have on the agenda for you to start. Yeah.
Rhonda, did you get the agenda that I resent you?
Yeah, it was me after Vivian, but that's okay, no problem at all. I can just jump into this. I'm going to share my screen. I have some slides that I made. Before though, I just wanted to say thank you, Michelle, for hosting us. We really appreciated the opportunity to work with Women on Wednesdays when we were in real life in Lafayette at South Louisiana Community College, where I teach. And we have a very active AAUW group there, as well as throughout the state. So this is just a wonderful opportunity for us to come together and work and do advocacy, even if it's not in real life, it's in real time. So I put together a few slides regarding some of the bills that are relevant to equal pay, to pay equity, to security in terms of employment, being able to speak about one's, somebody doing that? Okay. About being able to speak about one's pay and without penalty. And I did actually pull an interview from Representative Mandy Landry, who has a really energetic bill regarding voting by mail for Louisianans. And I think that it ties really well to what we're doing with pay equity and just making our voices accessible when it comes to our employment and our security. So with that, I'm looking for my presentation and I'm getting it started up. All right, and let's see. Let's just minimize that. All right. So do you all see the screen I'm sharing?
Oh,
Okay, it's coming. All right.
yep, we see it now.
Yes, we see it.
Great. Let me just minimize this so I can see. All right, so again, thank you, Michelle. And I think it's kind of interesting that we're working on April 15th, tax day, technically tax day. Again, we're looking at these just some data regarding from Pew Research regarding just the basic facts comparing women to men, mothers and fathers, and their the impact that their employment and their risk levels, how they affect each person in the family respectively. I have to admit, this is my first presentation, so I'm having a hard time not looking at your faces, but only looking at a screen. And let me try to can I change the screen here? I think we're all familiar with, I'm trying to be able to see the audience. There we go. All right, that's better. All right, can y'all still see my screen? Yes? Oh, everybody's muted. This is so hard. I'm used to teaching in like a normal classroom. Okay. Okay. So, and all of my data, all of the slides have references. So everything is accessible whenever we close this, and we can make it accessible to everybody in a file. When it comes to Louisianans, here's some of the information I got. There's the source there at the bottom. 40% of Louisiana workers have no days that are paid, no paid sick leave days. I know you've all been hearing stories about people who are on the front line. I really appreciate doctors who are saying that they're not the front line of this pandemic. They are the last line. The front line is our everyday folks who are all of a sudden essential workers, and they're the ones that are most at risk. Of course, we're hearing anecdotal situations where some of our cashiers are dying, and they're the ones, like I said, they're the ones that are most at risk. We looked at, oops, let me move that out of the way. We looked at studies from before the coronavirus pandemic that showed the flu-like spread of the disease that was actually down in 11% of places that had those sick leave mandates. The Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act provided some paid sick leave and family paid leave to workers, but left out most of those folks, and will end, of course, this year. So it was just a sort of temporary stopgap in a reaction to a situation, and not something that is built into the core of how we live our lives and how we treat our employees. So we have two bills, House Bill 832, and then a bipartisan bill 797. You can, I added the links in case you wanted to read through those bills. They're of course several pages long. Representative Willard's bill mandates that paid sick leave can be earned for all employees, part-time and and full-time at businesses of over 20 employees. And the Duplessis and Stagney bill serves to repeal the state ban on local control of sick leave policy to make a more uniform policy that protects our employees. I spoke with Representative Willard, and I asked him to send a statement regarding his bill. And you'll see here that he says that he believes that Louisiana workers should not have to put their health and that of their families in jeopardy due to a fear of losing their jobs. During the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, we know we could have stymied the spread of the deadly virus if symptomatic individuals could have sought medical guidance and recovered. So you see his statement again incorporates the importance of taking care of our employees, giving them a voice to continue to work, but also to have protections for themselves and for their families. The treatment of our workforce is representative of our own values as a state. Again, this is not, or it should not be a partisan issue. I mean, this is, if anything, this pandemic should continue to reveal, as our work as advocates do, that these are not partisan issues that we're dealing with. So we look at equal pay in Louisiana. We still have an offset in terms of our ratio of what women and men are earning. It had the ratio has sort of increased in terms of toward equality in the last year. But again, I've got some stats and some links where you can find that we're not where we need to be. And if, again, our African-American brothers and sisters, Latina women especially, and Black women especially, are much more worse off. So we are studying the contributing factors regarding how we would mitigate this issue, raising the minimum wage that we've gone to bat for several times in the legislature the last few years. And of course, when we're secret about our pay, we don't know what the disparity is, so we can't advocate. And of course, that's deliberate control. So then we also have Barbara Carpenter's Bill 447, again, prohibiting firing or retaliation from speaking of about those wages. Unleash Local, Julie Harris sent me some information, which is where I'm compiled these slides. A lot of that information came from her. She is looking at the top line issues, the bans on the sick pay leave, the direct impact that has on employees. And then you'll see why they are advocating for local control so that we can protect our employees. I think I'm kind of running a little bit long, but I'll get to where I need to go here. And then, of course, the impact of the coronavirus and how minimum wage fits in. Again, the risk factor that we now see hitting those folks on that front line. I've got a really brief interview by Mandy. She gave me permission to share this. We spoke yesterday and today. So I want to pull that link here. And this is again regarding her bill. Let's see, it's taking a minute to load. I don't know what's going on. Move that over. This page was loading slow yesterday. Here we go. And it's coming, it's coming. So again, I wanted to promote the work that Representative Carter, Royce, and Representative Stagney, and of course Matthew Willard are doing, all individual components of what we're trying to achieve and address with equal pay, pay leave, and pay protections for employees. And I think that ties well with
Fox 44, performance contractors proudly salute the frontline professionals in the fight against COVID-19. They put themselves at risk for all of us. Thanks to them, we'll all get through this together. Sponsored by Performance Contractors. We build better.
all right.
Well, the coronavirus is prompting new
There we go.
normals in our world, and it's casting a new light on your vote. NBC Local.
Life just has to make adjustments.
Kat McKinney knows adjustments well. When the LSU senior isn't online, finishing spring courses remotely, she's online petitioning for state government lead.
It's taking a little while to
Vote remote.
load.
And
That's disappointing.
adjustments too, just kind
State law today lets up
I don't think it's gonna play
now
right.
telling the Secretary of State.
And considering what's going on.
Oh, guys.
There's outbreak.
I should just stop it. Okay, let me go back to. All right. Sorry about that. There's some strange lag time happening. I've tried to close some windows. Maybe it was stalling. It doesn't look like that. And I've got high-speed internet. I don't know why that's happening. Okay, so I did link up that interview as well as Mandy's Representative Landry's bill. Let's see. Here are the links to all the references regarding the data that was put together for this presentation. And let me get out of this slide and get back to our group. There we go. Okay, sorry guys, I'm sorry about that that lag time there. Oh, and y'all are all muted. Let's see. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. And you know, whatever feedback, whatever, if we want to segue into what Vivian had presented, then I'll be happy to come in at the end and we can address questions. And I'll piggyback off of Vivian.
Rhonda, there is one question that was in the chat box that I think we could go ahead and ask. No, it's okay. I'm here to moderate. So the question is, well, the intro is it's too bad it took a pandemic to realize that we need paid leave. And the question is, are the previous three bills that you mentioned currently in the pipeline at the legislature?
They are, and you can see the progress of those bills in the link when you. That's why I added the bill numbers to make it easy to access. You can pop them into the Louisiana Gov. Hold on. Well, you can pop them into the Louisiana legislative webpage and see the progress that they're making and their status.
Great, thank you. And then Barbara Kaplinsky wrote in the chat box that the State Senate Government Affairs Committee is currently hearing the SOS Coronavirus Emergency Response Bill, which I think includes the vote by mail.
Correct.
So we'll be able to have hopefully some updates on that, on the progress of that one soon.
And I didn't want to convolute the direction of the presentation today, but I do think that is a very important bill and plays well into what we're doing legislatively with the AAUW initiatives.
Great.
Thanks, Michelle.
No problem. All right, so our next presenter is Vivian, so we are going to let Vivian take it away.
Okay, unmute myself. And so it's it's really great to be with you. I see some new faces. I see some faces that have seen my presentation before. But I think the important thing is, let me see, let me go here. All right, so the important thing I think is, even if you've heard this, for the last years that we've been up at the Capitol, we don't seem to be moving the needle much in terms of explaining to people exactly what equal pay is. We're not getting women to jump on board with us. And so we're going to have to find new ways to get this message out. So, AAUW has been putting this out since 2004, these books, The Simple Truth About the Gender Pay Gap. I'm going to summarize it sort of quickly, but I think for all of us, we have got to go out, we've got to talk to other women, explain this is not fuzzy numbers. I think we all say it. So when I say it's not fuzzy numbers, it's based on statistics and research, and it has a real impact in terms of numbers. So we're going to look at what it is, how it is defined, how it is calculated, what are the causes, and what are the solutions. And actually, Rhonda did cover a couple of really important things. But I do think if we all, as advocates, start compartmentalizing this discussion in those parts, I think we'll be better able to present it. And I think there needs to be more of us prepared at the legislature to testify at the table on this. I know some legislators have read this book, and I have at times even sat at the table myself, and I had to work really hard to know this book, because to answer their questions. So we have to be prepared whenever we get this opportunity again, not only with talking with other women, but with legislators, trying to capsulize this. So I'm going to roll through this and try to, share with you the salient aspects of the simple truth about the gender pay gap. By the way, for those of you who don't know, I'm state president of AAUW of Louisiana. We're going to be having a new board coming in. So Rhonda's on our board. Pam Baldwin's online. She's our treasurer. Debbie Frieda's online. I'm not looking at all the faces, but we have a lot of AAUW members, and I'll just make this pitch. We need you to join us. It's about $89 to join us for a year. We need your support. Go to aauw.org for more information about who we are and to join our team. So anyway, the simple truth about the gender pay gap. Let's see, usually takes a second to get the slides moving. Let me see.
Vivian, your volume is pretty quiet, so I wonder if you can pull your mic on your headset just a little closer to your mouth.
Okay, would it be this one? I was having some. Is that better? Okay, great. Great.
Yeah.
Move my water out of the way. All right, thanks for telling me that. All right, so gosh, I think it skipped. I think it skipped a few slides. Alrighty, how did I get here? Let me see if I can go back. Let me see. Yes. Okay. All right. So what is the pay gap? It's a comparison of men and women's salaries, earnings, I should say, whether you're comparing them weekly or annually. So the Department of Labor does this in terms of the numbers. You've also got data from the U.S. Department of Census. The pay gap in Louisiana, we're the worst in the country. Nationally, women are earning 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. In Louisiana, our pay gap, men are making 30% more than what women are earning here comparatively. So that's an important number. Okay, how do we calculate it? Well, there's the earnings ratio, which is calculated by dividing the men's salary into the women's. And then the pay gap is, the balance of that number nationally. So I'm going to go through this. A lot of people think that that's just one number. That is one number comparing all the jobs of all women and men working full time in the United States. But we can break that down, and those numbers are very important. So it's really important. One thing to know is there's good news. The pay gap has gotten smaller over the last 60 years. That's because women are getting higher degrees. Women are also a higher percentage of the workforce. And men's salaries have pretty much stagnated. At the current rate in Louisiana, it'll be goodness gracious, 21.15 before women see equal pay. The difference between women and men's median earnings in Louisiana is about 15,000. So women making about 34,000. Wow, how would that rock their world to be making $50,000? And we make another clear statement too. We're talking about equal pay for equal work. We're not trying to give women anything they're not entitled to. So we have to value the work that women do, because that's just another factor in this formula, that we really don't value the work that women do. So why should a parking garage, attendant make the same as a daycare worker who now requires more secondary education? This next slide shows how the pay gap affects us based on race, ethnicity, and gender. So what you're going to see is 6 ethnicities listed in this chart. And the women are in gold and the men are in blue. And so what it's going to show is in each and every one of these ethnicities, there is a pay gap between women and men. And the pay gaps are smaller in these other ethnicities, than other ones than the white, non-Hispanic, and the Asian, because the white males make so much more than even the males in the other ethnicities. And what you can also note is that the higher earnings are made by white males and white females and Asians in terms of ethnicity. So, but this just shows you the power of that number on women and men, and the work that we do and how it's recompensed. So white males are the largest demographic in the workforce. So that is why we compare our salaries to them. And what you're going to find, and there are 2 different surveys. The ACS works better with smaller numbers. So you'll find these ethnicities with just few, with lower numbers, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. So that's probably a more accurate number regarding those smaller populations than the other. But you will see that women of color in particular have huge disparities compared to the earnings of white males' earnings. So that's what it's telling us. And it really does affect us quite differently. You can see Asian women are earning about 87 to 90% of what white males are earning. And you got Latinas and African American, 54%, 63%. Hey, how you gonna pay the bills with that? And that's what we're seeing today. Rhonda talked about it, but what we're seeing as a result of this pandemic, it's going to be some of the effects of this. Women are going to have less money in their savings accounts. They're going to have less money in their retirement accounts and their 401ks because of earnings, unequal earnings. So we talked about race and how the pay gap affects you, age. So we find that younger women today are almost on parity, earning 93% of what similarly, working males are earning. But as women get older, the pay gap increases, and the higher earning years from 35 to 65, where you're putting money away for your 401k, where you're saving money, paying off college loans, etc., saving for retirement, those numbers are smaller. And you see we're back up to, 25%, of a pay gap based on age. And there are more women living in poverty as well. And I worry about these women. I worry about these people during this time. I really do. It's very, very sad. The pay gap in education. We know more women are getting higher education. Normally, the higher degrees result in higher earnings. But what you're going to find is that women with less than a high school diploma are earning, they have a smaller ratio than women with higher advanced degrees. I'm not sure why that is. This is what the data is telling us. Okay. So when we compare for all of these things, education, race, age, we find the condition that women are in here in Louisiana, the second poorest state, the state with the highest number of people on earning minimum wage. We also have the lowest amount of unemployment insurance of any other state. It was like 234. Everybody probably knows that because maybe some of you have been in the unfortunate position to be unemployed right now or on furlough. So one more thing about demographics and how the pay gap affects people. Workers with disability are paid less than other workers. Let's see, workers with disability earn 72%. I think they earn like 69% maybe of what non-disabled workers earn. Sorry. And women disabled workers earn 69% of what disabled male workers are earning. So they have real problems this time as well. And finally, there's another group that we haven't talked about. And so there are, oh gosh, I should have reviewed the number. There are, I guess, about 1 million people who do not identify with the gender that they were born with. And so they have surveyed this population with regard to the pay gap. And it turns out that when an individual transitions from female to male, their salary may stay the same or go up a little bit higher. When you go from male to female, your salary will drop. It's crazy. So, all right, so we've talked about what it is, how it's defined, and how it affects us all based on age, education, race, etc. So let's talk about the causes. There are 3 main causes. How's my time? Okay, got a little time left. So there are 3 main causes, but there are other of the gender pay gap. One is occupational segregation. Women and men tend to go into different majors in college, work different fields, and they often go into lower paying fields. Women also, and it's a fact, they work shorter hours than men because they take care of families and children more often than men do. And this is a fact. And they often require more flexible schedules. But let's realize that this bullet point here is, there's going to be a huge impact based on the pandemic in terms of flexibility and work and people working at home. But the truth is, in general, women work fewer hours than men, even if you look at, a 32-hour work week. And finally, the data shows that perhaps 7 to 12% of the pay gap is actually based on discrimination. So let's look at I'll show you a few slides that illustrate what I'm talking about. So on this slide, you will see the women salaries identified in gold, in the male in blue. the top section of the chart, this is earnings ratio, median weekly pay among full-time workers in selected occupations. So the top part of the chart is male occupations, where you like truck drivers. There's a 20% pay gap there. Even for software developers in these male-dominated fields, there's a pay gap. There's, what is that, 17%. Turns out that when women go into male-dominated fields, the salary of everyone in the fields kind of goes down, that ratio. This middle part of the screen shows sort of mixed, jobs where men and women are almost equal. And at the bottom, these are generally jobs that women hold, and you'll still see the pay gap. It's in just about every single occupation in the directory of occupational types. It's just this. Let's talk a little bit more. So women are more likely to work part-time, take time out of the workforce. Turns out that when women leave the workforce and come back, there's something called the mommy penalty that affects your salary even more than if you hadn't left. Men, when they become fathers, they typically get a fatherhood bonus. And fathers do make more than mothers do in the workforce. And employers, well, up until very recently, were still expecting, 40 hours a week in the office. So let's see. Gender discrimination and bias. How do we know that? How do we determine that? It's really hard. If you're in personnel and you're looking at your staff's folders, other than that number, you're not really sure how to tell that there is actually a gender gap. What we do know is this. Fewer women ascend to positions of leadership, even though women are like a majority of the workers in the workforce. They're a very small percentage of the executive leadership out in the workforce. I mentioned earlier also, when women start working in male-dominated fields, salaries fall even for the men. And I would like to draw your attention to a study AAUW did in 2012, where, based on all those factors we just looked at, education, college major, what part of the country you're in, your age. They studied college graduates 1 year after graduation and comparing for all the factors we just talked about. There was a 7% pay gap already between the males and the females. And this is a real number based on statistics. So let me close in saying that there are some laws. Congress does enact laws and policy to try to chip away at the pay gap. And legislators will tell you this, and the response is, we've still got this problem because these laws have holes in them. So they need to be continually updated. President Obama signed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act in 2009 that did a lot with the law affecting gender discrimination cases. The Paycheck Fairness Act is moving through Congress. I believe it's over on the Senate side. Camille may be able to give me an update on that, but I believe last fall it got through the House. These are other acts that are pending. Obama, our last president, President Obama, had some executive orders, such as one to require federal contractors, requiring them to comply with equal pay. Because what you'll find is there's more transparency in federal and state government. There's equal pay there. There's practically equal pay there. President Obama signed an executive order to require federal contractors to comply, but President Trump got rid of that particular order. And some of the things that he's done recently, and I'm having trouble, just remembering off the top of my head, even the last few weeks, have affected women's pay. Just about every state has equal pay laws, but they have gaps and holds in them. Every state except Mississippi and Alabama. Okay. But even the rest of them have gaps, like Louisiana. There's an Equal Pay Act for state employees, but not for private industry. And that's what we keep going back to the legislature about. So let's see. There you go. So what can we do? We need you to join AAUW and join us in our work. We want you to know that the pay gap is real and pervasive. And the facts that I just gave you are in the books. I'm sure many of you have. And if you don't have, you can email me. We can get you a book. But you can also find it online at aauw.org. AAUW, and I really want to share this with you, we don't just talk about research. Okay, I'll be ready in a minute, Michelle. We don't just talk about research, we're actually doing some things about this. We give out over $4 million every year to women in non-traditional fields. We have salary negotiation workshops, and they are free. So I urge all of you to go there. Tell all of your friends. You can email it out, aauw.org. There are free salary negotiation seminars, last about 15 minutes, and that's going to help women as well. But we also advocate at the legislature in addition to the research that we do. Join us, and thanks a lot. So I had closed my, let me see if I can get back to, I'll stop sharing and see if I can get back. Does anyone have questions? No one has any questions yet? I'll stop talking. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Vivian. If folks do have questions and you'd like to ask them with your voice, you can unmute yourself either on your phone by pressing *6, or you can press the phone icon on your computer.
You can also press the space bar.
Oh.
Who knew?
We're all learning new Zoom tricks.
I'm very proud of myself.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat box. Are there any particular private industries that seem to be worse offenders? It seems public sector is less of an issue, probably because they are under more scrutiny.
Okay, so I don't have any names of any particular companies. I don't know. What I'm thinking, one of the bad ones was probably the movie industry. And even some of that may be changing. But no, I don't. But I will add this, though, that AAUW does work with businesses. And I'm sorry, I don't have more specific information to give you, Spiros, on that. But we do work with them to have transparent policies, to do best management practices for personnel. So again, this is another area where we literally have to be active participants with regard to companies, because many of them, when we go to the legislature, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry brings out a woman lobbyist to attack all of these numbers. They attack the scientific method used to get the statistics. They attack everything about it. But their main complaint often seems to be that they think they will make less money. And the truth of the matter is, transparent policies make employees more productive. The research proves this. And it makes them feel more valued in the workplace. So you get more productivity with pay transparency, where people are not just disciplined for talking about their salary or talking about other people's salaries. You shouldn't, goodness gracious, to me, that's First Amendment issue. But these are the things that we run into when we're at the legislature. And it's just really not true. And there really are some large companies that have enacted equal pay policies that have very happy, well, as happy as you can have an employee. So that's my answer. Anything else? Well, that's it. I urge everyone.
I have
to
a
yeah. Oh,
Michelle.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, it's Rhonda. So I wanted to add to what Vivian said regarding the public sector versus the private sector. Teaching in higher ed the last 16 years, I know that when, you know, there's increases in pay, increases in wages, everything is very transparent. If you want to know how much a teacher starting out will earn in Louisiana, it's all there on the website. It's very clear. There are issues sometimes, though, in terms of promotions. There are obligations, I guess you could say, that women have wherein they're prevented, but it's sort of indirectly from advancing, and it has to do with those issues that have to, you know, that are connected to, you know, building a family. You know, women have certain illnesses that involve their lives at a certain age when they are trying to build their equity and their long-term stability, financial stability. So I think what we need to look at is a way to address those issues, because we have the data, and just try to find that equity, try to strike that balance, being conscientious of those issues that hit women harder than they do men. And of course, you know, sometimes men, especially in divorce, they tend to sort of maintain their autonomy, and they continue their trajectory, their upward trajectory, in terms of advancement, even in the public sector. So even though there is more transparency, there still are those issues that are related to gender equality.
sure.
Hey, this is Mary Pritchard. Actually, adding to what Rhonda just said, I had read an article about how, especially women who don't work, or women who make much less money, if they do get a divorce, they have to remember that they are entitled to part of their husband's retirement. So that's something just to consider, is that when you get a divorce, you make sure that you take that into consideration during the divorce, not 5 years later, not 2 years later, not 10 years later when you're retiring, but that's something that women are entitled to part of their husband's retirement if they are running a household when they're married.
Right, that's part of the community property. And there are penalties, of course, for tapping into retirement, but women are allowed to roll those into their own IRAs. I'm speaking from personal experience, but a lot of times women will have to take that penalty when they divorce, because or trade it for something else, some other equity in their home, in their community property. So again, yeah, absolutely, all these other factors need to be addressed through legislation to make sure that those protections are there for women. But that's for men too. I know that there are a few men whose women were earning more, and that protection is there for them as well.
Yeah. There's one more thing I think I would like to add, and that has to do with valuing women's work. And that's a whole nother thing. And again, the issues highlighted during this pandemic, you know, the women cleaning toilets and emptying bedpans and aides. This is a really important job in a hospital. I mean, and so you've got this hierarchy from doctors, you know, all the way down. And, but they're very valuable, and that work is valuable. The garbage men, I mean, all this, you know, we're going to have to, I do hope this event helps us reevaluate, because women have all, you know, the teachers, the secretaries, the administrative assistants, and that's diversifying now. I don't know if it's streaming or not, but it's really important that we value the work that women have been doing, because those jobs are important, and the fact that they make less money, it's even in our heads. it's even in our heads. You know, there's a way to look at work and its value. And when we're talking about equal pay, we're talking about work of you know, similar quality, similar value, you know, same work. So, and that's what this is about. And my gosh, our whole work world is now upside down. So we'll just have to roll with this for a while. It's going to be very difficult, but it breaks my heart. I feel very grateful. I'm okay. And a lot of people aren't. And I hope that when this is over, that even our legislature in Louisiana will do something to affect the lower waged workers here, because, you know, we've just proved that it's all important. It's all important. So thanks a lot, guys.
Are there any other questions?
Oh, I see that Camille has made a note that Macy's is one of the companies been cited for being gender unfriendly. Well, they got a lot more problems now. So.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining today. Yep, go ahead.
Hey,
Rhonda.
I did want to just remind folks that, you know, with the legislative session moving, our reps are reporting to duty, and they are accessible to us. We have a lot of newbies there that are already, you know, blazing the trail. And so just like AAUW and Unleash and Vote and all of our other organizations, I really implore folks to connect with your reps. And if you're not in a very progress-friendly zone, reach out to reps who do need the support regardless, you know, even if you're in a different part of the state, because they are well, they're there for that reason, but they need us as much as we need them. So please do reach out. They make themselves very accessible. I didn't hear back from Barbara Carpenter, but I got messages back from other folks, and even folks who are not necessarily part of these initiatives, and they had things to say, but it kind of took off of the topic, but they're there and they want to hear from us.
When's your next meeting?
Great, that's a good segue. So I'm going to put up this right now. So our next Women on Wednesdays is on April 29th, same time, same place. We do encourage you to register for that specific one. You can do that at the Eventbrite link. The next one will be focused on abortion access during the pandemic. A lot has been happening with that. You know, so we really just wanted to catch folks up on, you know, what was kind of going on with, you know, orders from the John Bel Edwards administration, you know, efforts that the Attorney General has taken, and a recent lawsuit that was filed. We also wanted to focus on some of the other sort of aspects of reproductive health care that have been impacted by the pandemic. So I hope that you'll join us for that one as well. Several people have asked for the slides, so we will get the slides from the presenters, and we'll send an email out later today with those slides attached, and also the link to the recording and a link for you to register for the next Women on Wednesdays. So thank you all very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this day.